And joining our program right now is the activist of human rights and democracy in Burma. And she's also the coordinator of Burma Partnership. KNU.
Yes,
good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Sorry?
Thank you for joining our program.
Oh, sure, thanks.
Now, after hearing that the Burmese government and the most prominent ethnic rebel groups, KNU, signed a ceasefire agreement, I couldn't help but wonder, does this mean that the KNU now trust the government, considering what happened in the past?
Could you, like the last part, could you repeat it again?
Does this mean that the KNU now trust the government, considering what had happened in the past?
KNU now...
What's that? Can you hear us okay?
There's a little bit of the crack from my end. Can you just, the last part I didn't hear well, sorry.
Okay, do you think that the KNU now trust the government so that they agree to sign the ceasefire agreement?
What I understand is that this talk is the initial talk towards the ceasefire agreement. So that is my understanding from their statement, and also talking to the Karen community here.
So it's just basically it hasn't been anything set in stone with this whole agreement.
Well, I think it looks like that the meeting was just today, and as far as I know is that whatever the actual proceeding of the meeting there is not really informed to this side yet. So the KNU actually, their objective of the talk today is, as they said, is the initial talk to discuss how they can actually reach to the ceasefire. So that's the very first step towards achieving the ceasefire agreement. So.
Now, with this ceasefire agreement between the KNU and Myanmar government, is there any information on what entails in this agreement?
As far as I know that basically for the KNU, they have there are like 11 point proposal, and which detail like how they would like to see, for example, they would like to see the nationwide ceasefire, particularly stopping the armed conflicts in the ethnic areas.
So basically, they're also speaking up for other ethnic groups too, such as...
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, and they have their 11 points proposal. They have detailed also the safety and human rights of the civilians, for example. So yeah, and also to stop like forced labor, arbitrary taxation, and all these like different violations or the abuses the Burma army is committing. So of course, I mean that's something that when the KNU actually have more of this detail. Looks like that they have a detailed proposal.
What about the Myanmar government? What do you think they would require from the KNU in reciprocal? Because I'm sure, the government probably also wants something from them too, right?
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't really know what is the substance from the Myanmar government side, their proposal. But it's reading from the, from the KNU side is like, it seems like both sides would like to have the ceasefire. But I think like the today talks is the initial, so I'm sure they will have more to discuss of the details to that needs to follow to be able to reach to the actual ceasefire.
Have you had a chance to talk to whether the KNU or the Karen ethnic group people at all?
Yes.
What do they think about this initial?
Some of the Karen community people today. And once there was a news, the news, it was in the media, came out is that the KNU signed the ceasefire agreement. And then when the news came out, those Korean colleagues who I was with, they all were very worried because they said, I mean, I asked them, of course, and they said, like one of the young Korean women told me that she's very sad and worried. Also, she felt like this news is something like a news when she heard about her mother died. And also, like, you can see they are faced with this worry and concern. And I asked, basically, they said their previous experience has told them that the previous ceasefire agreement never brought the real peace for the Ren people. And instead, they've been having more of these human rights violations in their area as the Burma army continue to take over and control their area. And they have to have like they said, more of our people had to flee across the border to Thailand, become refugees or internally displaced people. So basically, they are worried of what is this ceasefire, if there is any, meaning to them. But when I talked to the KNU, basically they said, as they have already issued their statement yesterday, this is the initial talk towards the ceasefire. Yes, they want a ceasefire, and of course they have to discuss further in detail of how this ceasefire can be achieved in a sustainable way.
Now, with this development in Burma so far, what is your take on this? Could we call it like another stepping stone towards democracy?
If the ceasefires become genuine, meaning that these ceasefires are transparent and also open, announced to the public, particularly the affected communities, of what that means to them. If their safety is guaranteed with the monitoring of the civil society and, of course, the international community, the access is open, and also the humanitarian access restrictions are lifted by the Burmese government. And then I think we can say that it's getting into the real stepping stone. But I think for the particular moment, but at this moment, particularly because while you're seeing the Burmese government talking to the KNU, what you are seeing in the north is the Burmese army has intensified the fighting, attacks, army attacks, military attacks against the Kachin ethnic group, the KIA. You see, so it's a bit difficult to see of like what is it with in the whole take of their current step or the current process towards this negotiation process with the ethnic people. Because with one group you see them talking, on the other hand they are actually increasing the attacks. So it's a bit difficult for us to judge what is it that they are really trying to do now.
Right. When do you think they're going to follow up with this process?
With the current, right?
With the ceasefire agreement, now it's just initial stage, right? Now it's basically they just start to talk.
Right. I think it looks like if what the news coverage is somewhat to the positive side as it claims, and then it looks like then the KNU will discuss more of these 11 points that they have proposed. Yeah.
I see.
So, but I think that before the 11 points, I think what they are saying is that 11 points is more of their real dialogue process. But in order for that dialogue process to discuss these 11 points, but of course the first step is the ceasefire. And I think that in order for the both sides to have the actual ceasefire, real formal agreement, I think it looks like they have KNU actually has some of the rules and procedures for both sides to agree and follow. And I guess that may be something more in the coming time that we might see.
Thank you so much, KNU, for joining our program tonight.
Sure.
Good evening.